Yeah, I think we are. I've just clicked go live now on YouTube. Yeah, so I believe we are. Right, I'm going to change the view to gallery view so that they can see both of us.
Yeah.
That should be right. Right, so welcome to the fourth of our discussions Q&As. I'm joined today by Jordan Holloway, one of our younger anglers.
Afternoon, everyone.
As always, before we dive into the questions, so make sure you are sending any questions in, no matter how silly you think it might be, stick it down so that we can get to them and get them answered throughout.
We want loads of questions, don't we? Loads of questions.
As many as you can, get them sent in, and we'll aim to get them all answered for you. But let's kick off with a few things I've prepared for you, Jordan. But first things first, you've been out doing a bit of fishing, obviously no matches. How have you been coping and what have you been getting up to?
Well, for a month, for like January, I had just a complete moan. Matches are cancelled. I can't go fishing, can't do anything. But then come to February, I saw Joe Carassi been out catching some chub. So I thought, right, I'm going to get out. I've got Bewdley. I live in Bewdley, right next to River Severn. And I've been barbelling. And it's been really good. Like I've been out 4 or 5 times, caught some barbel, caught some chub the other day as well. And it's been absolutely brilliant, to be honest. And I've ended up not missing matches at all, really.
Yeah, I know I did something similar sort of last summer, just as we came back out of it, and absolutely loved it. I'd never really done that sort of going and setting myself a target.
Yeah, I remember seeing.
Yeah, but absolutely loved it. So Bewdley, River Severn, it's sort of super well known for barbel and chub catches.
Yeah,
a brilliant stretch of river, and it's right on your doorstep.
Literally a 5-minute walk.
Brilliant. How have you been approaching it? What are the tactics?
Well, for me, it's still it's been winter time. It's been cold when I've been, so I've been chucking out just a bomb and meat to begin with, and then I've caught quite a few on pellets. Now, I got some pellets last summer for going barbelling, but I never actually ended up using them. And I thought, right, I'm going to take them down.
Riverfest, and because you were in the Riverfest final, weren't you? So...
And I did a few matches here at Bewdley at one point, and I had some pellets, so I took them down, and I've been catching really well on pellets. Now, the pellets I've actually been using, I've got them here. Look, ready as ever. These ones,
cheesy garlic
ones, and I've been catching quite a lot of barbel. I've had 1 or 2 doubles and quite a few others, and quite a few chub on them. Just fishing a swim feeder with 3 mil and 4 mil ones, and then literally an 8 mil one in a band, and it's been absolutely perfect.
Is that loads? Just been a band in a hair rig, and away you go.
Simple. Band in a pellet, band in a single 8 mil pellet. Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah, so
really
it is
good.
Similar to how I sort of approach him, like a refined match style. Because the rods that you've been using, what rod is it you've been using?
Just a Supera, 50 gram. I haven't got any stronger ones, so I've just been using a 50 gram Supera. The bent round double, but I think I lost one. I think I lost one on my first trip. Yeah. Doing the classic, trying to wind him in, but you can't just wind in barbel, and it snapped me. And ever since, I think I've not lost one. So perfect.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of match anglers can probably take from that, is that, like, I did the same, but you don't need specific barbel gear as such. Like a sort of strong, a normal sort of method feed, a carp rod is perfectly fine for it, isn't it, on a lot of venues?
Just an 11-foot carp feeder rod, I reckon, on most of it you can use, can't you? Because you're not chucking very far.
Yeah.
So, and you just need something with a bit of power to get them in. So
yeah, it's surprising how much you can pull, though. You said
you don't need any special gear.
No,
I don't think so.
Exactly, and yes, you can pull, and your rod's bending, but it's you can pull.
Don't pull out of them. It's brilliant.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
It's good. And it's obviously you mentioned there the cheesy garlic pellets. I know Joe's been using cheesy garlic oil and flavors on all his bait. Seems a bit of a winner for chub and barbel, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reps, Tony Morton, he told me to get some to begin with, and I got some. Didn't actually use them this winter, and I've caught loads of fish on them, chub and barbel. So they'll be a winner for me on the rivers in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Tony's a big fan of them. Yeah, he's been telling everyone about them, I think.
Yeah.
So you've not been struggling with no matches, but as an angler in general, you are what I'd class as a true all-rounder. You fish commercials. You're very well known for catching lots of F1s and shallow fishing, that sort of thing, through the warmer months. But you've grown up on those sorts of venues, rivers, and you fish a lot of natural venues throughout the year. Has that always been the case for you, keeping your own fishing varied?
For me, I like to vary it. It just keeps me always thinking about my fishing. So if I just went commercial F1 fishing, for me, I just get bored of it after a while.
Yeah.
I always enjoy it when I go, but if I was to go for like 3 months doing the same kind of fishing and just one kind of fishing all the time, I'd just end up getting bored. So varying it keeps me thinking, I think it just helps me improve as well. Like, I think it's good for an all-round angler to do.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like the year just gone, you were in the Riverfest final.
Yeah, that was a lucky one.
Yeah. Every year you're in there or thereabouts and getting into some of the big money finals as well. You were very consistent in them this year. You got lots of seconds and thirds as well.
Lots of seconds and thirds, but not many wins.
No.
I reckon I've been second in those big money qualifiers 6 or 7 times now. Ever since I was 15 at a Woodland View one, when I come second to Andy Power.
Yeah.
And still all right. Eventually I'll keep winning. I'll have more wins than I will second and thirds, I think, eventually. So
is there a knack to that sort of match? Is there just a mindset that you go into them with and you sort of just say, right, nothing else matters other than winning in this situation, sort of thing?
Yeah, for me on them qualifiers, I just go to win. If I blow out, I blow out. And it's the way I think about it. But if you go there and set everything up and try and catch a few fish and just have a day fishing, in my opinion, you're making it a lot harder to actually win. So you might as well just go there to win. And if you don't win, you haven't achieved the goal anyway. So you might as well just go there to win and not just mess around trying to fish over there and trying to fish over there. Just go, concentrate on a few methods, and I reckon that's the way to go.
Do you find it hard to write those matches off, or do you find it dead easy if you've not done very well, just to go, well, didn't matter anyway? I couldn't win.
I couldn't win. I can write them up very easy. It doesn't stick in my mind whatsoever, those kind of matches.
Fair enough. I've asked everyone this question so far, but obviously you've been with Preston Innovations and Sonu now for a couple of years, is it? It's about 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years, I think.
Has sort of knowing what goes on, what goes into all our ground bait mixes, about our bait, that sort of thing, do you think that that's helped you in your own fishing, knowing exactly what's in everything?
Yeah, to begin with, before I joined Preston and Sonubaits, I used the match method. Well, I use quite a lot of Sonu things anyway.
Yeah.
But now I know what is in them and like the extra little bits of detail about them. It's got to make some difference because you can pick your specific mixes for specific places.
Yeah.
And I just think that helps you catch a few more fish. For definite. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I don't think we keep it much of a secret, but some of the mixes are quite similar. It might only be that there's a few, like extra percent of different types of pellets, which mean they're slightly heavier or slightly fluffier and that sort of thing. So just knowing exactly what's in them.
Yeah, you can just fine tuning, isn't it? You can just fine tune your mix to exactly where you're going and what you want to catch. I think that just puts a few more fish in your net, I think.
Yeah. So from that, so you know a lot of the range now. What would you say your top 3 products are?
Well, I think everyone so far said match method mix, haven't they? This one. I've got it all here.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
So that's got to be up there. And this is going to be a bit of an interesting one. I do a few silverfish matches in the winter, and you can just use one bag of ground bait, and this is this one. Super sweet.
Sweet, yeah.
Everyone says F1 and Thatchers, but if you just want something different, this super sweet here just does the job. It's in 1 kilo bag, so you're not going to have all weight. And I just think that one bag for a commercial silverfish match, you can take that anywhere, and you're going to catch loads of fish, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
it was really annoying actually, because we went and had a practice at Moorlands, didn't we, ahead of the Silverfish League there, and we used that mix on the day and caught an absolute
loads.
We were just like, right, that's the mix. We don't need
big
any
bream as well.
Big bream, absolutely emptied it. Like, it was silly, wasn't it? How good it was. And then we fished one.
Really good day.
We fished one round. Both got plagued by carp and F1s that didn't count. And then it got cancelled.
Yeah, the mix I was going to use, I was literally just taking a bag of that and going to mix it up, and that would have done my job.
Yeah,
but got cancelled.
Oh dear. Hopefully we can do it next year.
Yeah, next year.
And then, what are your short and long-term goals in fishing?
Short-term goals. That's a hard one.
I suppose we'd say once matches start back up again, which is hopefully the end of the month.
Well, for me, when matches start back up again, I'll just be going on a few of them qualifiers, trying to qualify again. Fishermania is a big one. May of matches and golden reel. So really, a short-term goal is to try and qualify for one. But then a long-term goal is probably to win the final of one. So that's probably two of my goals. But as soon as June comes as well, I'll do a bit more river fishing, and mix it up.
Yeah.
And my brother won the Bewdley Float League last year.
Yeah.
So I'm going to fish that this year. I didn't fish it like last year when he won, but I'm going to fish it, and I'm going to smash him up. I'm going to show you how it's done. Yeah. That's my plan.
Yeah. So your brother does that sort of fishing quite. He's quite focused on that sort of fishing, isn't he? Compared.
Yeah, he just fishes the matches on the River Severn, really.
Yeah. Nice. And obviously, Fishermania this year, the list of qualifiers, I quite like the look of that. And when I saw it, I thought like that looked like it's going to suit quite a few of our guys. There's
bit more varied, I suppose, isn't it? Bit more, not just like a few venues, but I suppose they had to do it for COVID last year. But I suppose there's going to be a few more varied ones, a few more interesting ones. Old Huff for you, Todber, ones that not been in before. So should be good. Should make it interesting.
Yeah, it should be good.
Definitely.
Hopefully, I've seen that they've started putting the events on Facebook, Angling Trust. So I'm guessing that they're going to put them live.
I think they're on next week. Next week.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the people that work there usually send me a little message in the build up just to let me know to get ready. So
I feel like there'll be a lot of anglers ready for these matches when they start again. But a lot of time to prepare. Yeah,
and I think that having the break, everyone's like raring to go, aren't they?
Yeah.
Tickets could be a bit good. I used to absolutely love it back in the day when they used to have like the poll where you used to like tick a load of boxes and then you waited to see which tickets you got allocated. It was annoying because people used to get tickets and then not turn up. So from that point of view, but all matches always sold out, didn't they? There was always a way to do it that way.
I don't think they all sell out this anymore, do they? But you can just go on and click which ones you want, which makes it more convenient, doesn't it? At least you know which ones you've got and when you go in on them. So
and if you do happen to have a spare weekend, you can sort of just go, oh well, that's on. I think I'll do that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's it. Just pop on one.
Yeah, which is good. Right, should we dive into the questions that we've been sent?
Crack on.
Let's have a little look. Right. Hi, Jake and Jordan. Great Q&As. I have got a lot of 4mm pellets to use up. I don't live near any commercial waters, just a 36-acre bream water. I haven't got a grinder. Any ideas how I can use them?
You could probably pre-bait with them. You could probably fish with them, can't you? Put them in a cage feeder or one of them hex mesh distance feeders. Just fish for bream. Probably get a few tins of corn. Mix the corn with the 4mm pellets. A bit of, I don't know, what mix would you use? Probably Thatcher's and F1. That's a classic kind of. You want a bit of a fish mealy mix if you're feeding pellets and corn. So I'll probably feed that Thatcher's dark and probably a bit of F1 for a bit of safety. And I reckon a bit of corn on the hook or hair rigged. I reckon that'd be the way to go. You can even pre-bait with your 4mm, like get some big feeders and feed it.
Bream love pellets just like carp.
Yeah, they'll eat them.
Just on commercials, carp generally get there first. Whereas if it's a nice big bream water, then
no problem feeding fishing. They'll eat them.
Yeah,
feed them as they are.
I'd be looking at doing a nice little mix of everything: some corn, some casters, some 4mm pellets. I'd probably soak the 4mm pellets first. get them all in a feeder, and they'll absolutely love them, won't they? Then,
you don't need to crush them down or anything. They'll eat them as they are, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Just get them in, David. I think big
just
breed.
Get them in.
Yeah, Bream absolutely love pellets, and if there are some carp anglers or anything like that on there, they'll have a taste for fish meal, so they'll love them. Dave said, afternoon chaps, when using micros for skimmers, what bait booster would you recommend to add to them?
Probably one of the sweet ones. Banoffee, that'd probably be a nice one. But I think in general, any of them, more of the sweet ones, any of the sweet ones, but not the meaty ones. I don't think skimmers like the meaty ones. I think they're more for carp and bigger fish.
Yeah.
But any of the sweet ones, and it'll be bang on.
Yeah, I think you're right with Banoffee's a good one, isn't it? It's I sent one of my mates over.
That washed out one as well. That's nice and sweet, isn't it?
Yeah, so washed out is it's like a bit like, well, there's now obviously we've now got Power Scope X, which is a Scope X.
That's one.
Washed out is Scope X Peach and Maple, which people might not know because it's called washed out, but yeah, so that's a nice sweet Scope X-y flavour, and I think Scope X for skimmers is good, isn't it? But yeah,
any of the sweet ones, I'm saying.
Good. Colin Walker, hi guys. Is there any chance Sonubaits producing Thatcher's Original in a pellet form for some venues that do not allow ground bait? I reckon it's a hard one, that, Colin, because the ingredients that are in Thatcher's Original, we'd basically be getting pellets, crushing them down to Thatcher's Original, and then
to make them all
Thatcher's
pellets.
Original back into a pellet, with the extra few bits and bobs that are in there. It's whether you'd sell enough by doing that, and I'm not 100% sure you would. There's basically in Thatcher's Original that you would just be looking for the pellet with the most fish meal possible in it, because Thatcher's, as much as people like it as a silverfish ground bait, is very high in fish meal. The closest that we probably have to that is our Pro Feed, just because it's the highest. It's got the most fish meal in there, the highest protein pellets. As an actual pellet, there may be some sort of spin-off of Thatcher's in pellet form, whether it's sticky method pellets, that sort of thing, but probably not as a Thatcher specific pellet.
What you can do if you don't want to feed a lot of it is get them bait punchers out of the punch set. Just punch some of the ground bait like that, as if you want to just feed a little bit like that, but not actually pellets. That's the idea. Yeah,
nice little option. Alan Williams, a few questions starting to come in. Have either of you had success on Western pools? That's me out of the question. Using a certain ground bait or booster flavour?
Using what? Repeat it.
A certain ground bait or a flavour, a certain flavour. So adding bait to ground bait.
The problem is with Western pools on the actual complex itself is everywhere's too deep for feeding it. Everywhere in the margins is 4 foot minimum, isn't it? So I don't normally feed any ground bait. I just stick to pellets or maggots. So for me, no. But on the clay pit, it's different. It's shallow water. You can feed ground bait. So I might do in the shallow water at the clay pit feed maybe the match method mix, but now we've got the Power Scope X, I might feed that one. But on the complex, I think stick to the pellets and stick to the maggots, because I think you're only going to have problems on the complex feeding ground baits too deep. You're just going to foul up them, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a very hard pellet dominated venue, isn't it? The main thing is making sure that your pellets get to the bottom quickly because of how deep it is. Usually sort of tight to the boards is, like you say, 3.5, 4 foot, isn't it?
Yeah. But on the clay pit, there are pegs where it's shallow water in the edge, and get on that Power Scope X down the edge there, I reckon it'll be bang on. What was the bait part? What was the flavour part of that question?
Just if there's any specific flavours that you would think that would be successful.
I think that Power Scope X at the clay pit in the shallow water will be the one.
Yeah, I think that I've got some of that right here.
Yes.
I think that as the colour of that is just going to be very popular for F1.
Very visual.
Yeah. that golden colour. It's got a bit of a fleck of red through it as well.
Yeah, I think that'll be the one.
Yeah, I think that'll be
And
really
that clear water as well, it's going to stand out, and some fish you're going to see, you're going to drag some in and going to catch some.
Yeah, unusual lake, that clay pit, isn't it, at Weston? Because it is, there are some pegs where it's shallow or close in, but in the middle, I wouldn't even like to hazard a guess at how deep it is.
Oh yeah, as the actual lake itself is very deep, isn't it? Like in the summertime,
knows, do they?
No, in the spring and summer when I normally go, it's normally you're fishing on a top kit where it's like 6 foot deep, fishing in your edges where you might have some shallow water, but you might not. You might still have to fish things like hard pellets. But then out there, you're just fishing maggots or casters shallow. To be honest, it's too deep to do anything else.
Yeah, and it's gin clear, and you can see the ones like coming up and then just dropping.
You can see some. If you look at people who have got drone videos of the clay pit, you can see them all come up and drop, can't you? The F1s in the water. So that's pretty cool lake, that is.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they actually feed, because you always expect, like, when you hook fish, for them to like scatter, don't you? Whereas in there, where it's so deep, they sort of just like drop. Sort of just do this, don't they? Like they come up, feed, and then just drop straight back down again. They're not like spooking out the way.
A few come up together, don't they? And then a few they drop. They don't like go off to the side. It's quite an interesting lake, that is. Yeah,
definitely. There's some really good underwater footage from that lake. I know that DHP have done some, and Joe's done some, Tom's done some. There's just because it's a really good lake to be doing that sort of thing, isn't it? Yeah. Ian Campbell says, "Hi guys, is there any new ground bait or bait due out that's got to be a game changer for match fishing?" Yes. So whilst you're on, Ian, we will go through the 4 new mixes that are in our range, just because you've asked. I happen to have them all here. I'll run you through exactly what they all are. So, Power Scopex. So we've mentioned this a few times now. As the name suggests, is a Scopexy flavour. It was Andy Power that came to us and said that he uses Scopex flavours on everything. I think we've got we had this sort of Scopex flavour. So Andy uses a lot of that, just putting it in his ground bait, on his pellets, that sort of thing. When he's pumping expanders or doing his pro expanders, he'll put that on it. So we've basically incorporated, it's not just Scopex, there's a bit of a twist to the flavour, but it is a Scopex base. And in there, crushed expanders, crushed pellets, there's a red fleck of pellet through there. This is going to be a heavier mix, perfect for cupping up to mud lines, down the edge, that sort of thing, in particular for F1s, but for carp and a bit of everything, really. I just think that Scopex flavour is going to be really nice. I know you like the look of that one, Jordan.
Yeah, I tell you what, when I first joined Sonubaits, I used to just use Super Crush Expander in the mud line, but it was too fluffy and it used to fluff up too much and draw too many fish in, too many liners and foul hookers, because it's all coming up in the water. And then Matty Dawes told me to mix it 50-50 with Match Method Mix.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit heavier, but you still get some waft of attraction, and it was perfect. But now that Power Scopex is like a joint of the two for me, and it'll be absolutely perfect for my mudline edge fishing. I think for F1 is perfect.
If you looked at the actual ingredients of both and sort of went, right, we'll do
added them all together,
that'd basically be there. A bit of a tweak and some extra flavour, that sort of thing, but in terms of, as a mix, it's just going to be absolutely perfect. I love that one.
That one bag for the mud line.
Yeah, that's the one. Another one we've got is krill and squid. I love that. Like, I can smell it. Like, the bag is like where I've ripped it open here. Like, it's so fishy. My 2 dogs keep trying to get into this room. I've had to put that box up because they keep trying to get in to get to that. The reason I like that, krill in general has been really, really popular over the years, but as a fish meal, it's not the best. It's very, obviously a krill is very bony and very little meat in there. It's great from providing calcium, but for a protein, there's very little in there. Squid, on the other hand, is a brilliant fish meal, full of protein, very little calcium. So in terms of what the fish are often seeking, it's absolutely perfect. So mixing the two, a krill and squid ground bait's absolutely amazing. That one again is really nice and heavy for cupping in down the edge. Really, really fishy smelling. You can add loads of water to it. I just think that's going to be an amazing ground bait for fishing down the edge or on a method feeder, that sort of thing, for I'd say for big fish.
I tell you what, I think it'll be good in coloured water just because of how much it smells. Like, that's what I'll use it for. I might use it for, say, edge fishing for carp. When the water's brown in the summer, gonna drag some fish in, that will.
Yeah, definitely. The third one, Thatcher's Green.
Yeah.
So
everyone loves Thatcher's.
Everyone loves Thatcher's. So in terms of, obviously, Thatcher's Original, Thatcher's Dark, this is a real deep green colour. I think it's absolutely perfect. Like, in terms of green ground baits, I think that is the most perfect green as well. I just think, that's just going to be really, really popular. Bream anglers, people that just like catching a bit of everything. Just think that's a great addition to that range.
Yeah.
And then the fourth and final one, part of our So Natural range, is Sweet Skimmer. Again, if I think I said it to you, didn't I, Jordan? If I was to get stuck on a desert island somewhere and had to take a bag of ground bait that I had to eat myself, this would be the one. It's full of biscuits, digestive biscuits, chocolate bourbon biscuits, obviously bread, that sort of thing. Loads of ingredients at natural venue species, skimmers, bream, roach, hybrids, all that. All love. And then it's got a really nice caramel flavour as well. I just think that's going to be an absolute winner for natural venues, or on venues where fish meal baits aren't quite as effective.
Yeah.
I think that'll be my Gloucester Canal mix for this year.
Yeah, I was about to say Gloucester Canal on the pole, that one.
Yeah, I think that'll be absolutely perfect. But yeah, lovely mix. So they're the 4 new ground baits. I think, to be fair, I think that I could, with those 4, do everything that I would need throughout a year.
Yeah. I think you could.
I think for all,
even though Sweet Skimmer just says skimmer, you're definitely still going to catch roach over it if you do go on natural venues, aren't you? Still going to catch bream as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's more just because it's that sort of biscuity base.
Yeah.
It's very, what people sort of think of as a skimmer mix, but skimmers, bream, there's still
everything will eat it, won't they?
Yeah, exactly. Everything will eat it. But yeah, 4 great mixes, and I think that you'd be able to do a bit of everything with them, and they'll cover you for everything. Tie that in with what you already like and use, and I think you're onto a winner.
Tell you what I like. You've got some Bandon Wafters and Power Scopex, haven't you?
Yeah.
And I like the little red look of the little red ones. I think they'll be perfect for a bit of mugging.
Yeah. I've not got the tubs, but I found a stray one.
Yes, there he is.
So that was actually part of it. So when Andy came to us and said about Power Scopex, or he said a Scopex bait, he said make sure when we do the Bandams that we've got reds in there as well. And that was always our thinking. We were thinking, like, how can we do that? Scopex is buttery, it's yellow. How can we then put a spin? So that's where the spin on the flavour.
That's what he wants it for, doesn't he?
We've tied in the red because for the Bandams, he wanted the red so that he can use them for mugging.
Little devil.
Yeah, so it's always, we've got like fluoro pinks and different things like that, but we've not actually got red. So that's a new addition. Nice red one for mugging.
Perfect.
I think that'll be good. Moving on, Anthony Hunt. All right, gents, excited for the new baits coming. Power Scopex has me intrigued. When and how would you use the ground bait?
Well, like we've explained, for me, it'll be on F1 venues, fishing in the edge, fishing in the mud line. Gonna do its job doing that, I think. That's where I'll use it. Yeah,
I think you'll be able to add a load of water, so you'll be able to make it like on the damp side, so that when you, either if you're feeding it through a cad pot and you sort of dip the pot under and lift it out, it's just going to sink straight to the bottom. Or if you're big potting down the edge, that sort of thing. I think if you mix it on the damp side, it's just going to be nice and heavy, but then kick off loads of attraction as well.
I think the extra red fleck in that one over the Match Method Mix and Super Crush expander that I used to use, I think the extra red fleck will just add a bit more visual. I think it's good that.
Hold some fish.
Yeah.
Nice. Richard Webb, hope you're all well. Great what you're doing. When would you use So Natural Sweet Skimmer ground bait for bream and skimmers instead of a fish meal type ground bait like F1 Dark and Thatcher's?
Well, I just think it's a mix to use if you're unsure. Like on some places you go, you don't know whether to use a fish meal mix, because especially in matches, you don't know if it's going to work. If you've never been to, say, some bit of a river or some bit of a canal, that sweet skimmer is a safe mix to use because it's natural, it's not got fish meal in, and you know you're going to catch something. So that's when it's going to be used for me.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think some venues like the Gloucester Canal on the feeder, when you sort of know that feeder line's bream and nothing else, I think you can get away with putting fish meal in. But then sometimes on the pole, you sort of like know that you might need to catch some roach, but you also want to catch some skimmers and bream. But I think sometimes if you just go, right, I'm just sod it, I'm just going to put F1 Dark and Thatchers in and put a load of fish meal in, you've almost like written off your chances of catching many roach or any roach.
Yeah, like fish meal mixes are powerful mixers, aren't they? Yeah. Like they have a lot of just very intense, and sometimes it puts the smaller fish, like the smaller skimmers and the roach off. So I think that's the kind of circumstances I'm going to be using sweet skimmer.
Yeah, and there's no reason as well why you wouldn't be able to use sweet skimmer and add some Thatchers or something to it, and sort of have a sort of, if you imagine
combined.
Yeah, if you imagine like Thatchers being your strong fish meal and then F1 Dark being a weaker fish meal, if you imagine then the other side of the scale, sweet skimmer, at least now you're able to go, well, I'll do sweet skimmer and some F1 Dark, and that'll be like diluted, a little bit of fish meal, but not very much. You might decide to go sweet skimmer and Thatchers, and then it's a real mixture. And
if you go to one venue, you can get it perfect for that venue you're going to, can't you? So you can get it, you know exactly what to add, and there's absolutely no problem with mixing the two mixes together.
Yeah. Joe has said, any tips for slider fishing, mate?
Any tips for slider fishing? No. No tips for slider fishing. Don't do it.
What's your slider fishing like, Jordan?
Get a feeder and cast your feeder in if you're going to fish a slider. That's my advice.
Very niche, isn't it, these days?
Very niche.
I would love to be a brilliant slider angler, but it's
absolutely pointless. It's absolutely pointless knowing how to fish a slider.
Yeah, except
in matches.
2 days a year for the Census Challenge on the Gloucester Canal, and that's just about it.
It might be nice if you're going pleasure fishing to use once if you want to learn how to unpick tangles. That's my advice.
That's true. Advice, to be fair. Paul Wilkinson, hi guys. When setting up pole line for pole fishing, is it best to set one up with pellets and particles and the other with just ground bait? And if so, how long would you give each line to see if it works? So I think this is at the start of the session. If you don't really know what to do, are you better to go pellets one side, ground bait the other, or a mixture? How would you sort of decide if you're trying to just work out what's going to be best on the day?
On a commercial.
Yeah.
We'll say it's commercially, and then, on a commercial, say, I would probably feed 2 lines, one with ground bait and probably some casters and worms, or casters and dead maggots or pinkies, depending on what time of year. If it's springtime, probably dead maggots and casters, bit of worms in reserve, and feed another with just pellets, say 4 mil pellets and maybe like a little golf ball of micros. That's how I'd feed my 2 lines. And then I'd see what's best. Probably start on the pellets because it's going to be quite instant. Give them time to come over the ground bait. And if your pellets is good and you go over your ground bait and you don't really catch any, that's when I'd probably add some micros to some ground bait. Probably put less dead maggots and dead casters in and just feed more ground bait and more micros on that one. If your pellet line's good.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you can keep bouncing the fish off your 2 lines, and I think you'll end up with a good catch doing that.
Is that sort of like, is that a skimmer approach, skimmer and bream type?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about there's no mention of species here. So what if Paul's thinking about catching carp, and say for example he's targeting across and he's got a certain depth there or down the edge. Does depth then come into it, depending whether you'd feed ground bait on a line or pellets on a line?
Yeah, depth is massive. For me, I personally don't feed ground bait on a commercial over anything like probably like 2 foot, 2.5 foot max. Because I just think you're going to end up with problems foul looking and getting liners and things. So I don't feed any ground bait over that personally, apart from maybe in the winter or spring feeding tiny little amounts of crushed expander or something like that. But feeding the volume of ground bait, I don't feed it in anything over 2.5 foot.
And that's where people start then talking about mudline fishing and fishing tight to banks, that sort
if you're fishing over 2.5 foot, that's when you just want to fish pellets, like probably springtime going into matches now. Probably maybe micros fishing in a pro expander on the hook, but probably feeding 4 mils and fishing a banded pellet on the hook. I think that'll be the way. But yeah, in the deep water, I'd stick to pellets over 2.5 foot, and I'd feed ground bait in less than 2.5 foot, but maybe an odd little ball of ground bait in your deeper, but not an amount of ground bait, because you'll just end up with problems.
Yeah, too much gets wafted up, doesn't it? And that's when you start struggling with false indications, and you think there's loads of fish there. It doesn't always. Yeah. It's not always the case, is it? You can have some incredible looking bites and striking
in the tail.
Yeah, in the tail, using fish, that sort of thing. So good advice there. Jeffrey Bacon, what mix would you recommend for catapulting to 30 meters for slider fishing, Jeffrey? So if you were fishing
ground bait,
if you had to fish slider, Jordan, and we made you, what would your mix be for doing that?
Pro River or Pro Bream, just for the stickiness.
Yeah.
And probably Sweet Skimmer. I'd probably use Pro River and a bag of that Sweet Skimmer. Yeah. Unless I know I'm just going to go and catch bream, and then I'd probably mix a bag of Thatchers with a bag of River, probably be my mix.
Yeah, because Thatchers is a fairly sticky mix, isn't it, on its own as well? Is that what you're looking for? What are you looking for in terms of how sticky it is or how quickly it breaks down? Are you just looking for something that will bind and get out there, basically?
Yeah, you want something really sticky, to be honest, because you want to feed it like one-handed balls, so little like sausages, and you want to make them all the same size. And the stickier your ground bait is, really, the easier it is to bind the balls into the one shape. The more exact they are, the easier you're going to get them out there in an accurate area. So you want quite a sticky mix. And I'd definitely add a bag of Pro River. And I think bag of Thatchers if you're after bream, and Sweet Skimmer if you don't know what you're on about. Don't know what you're going to catch, I reckon.
Good. I like it. Hi guys, what ground bait mix and what hook bait would you use on a shallow canal? Depth is around 3 to 5 feet for skimmers and bream in the summertime.
For skimmers and bream?
Yeah. I think this is the place, isn't it? Sweet Skimmer.
I'd feed Sweet Skimmer, just literally a bag of Sweet Skimmer, I think.
Yeah.
Unless you have to like big fish, tench, massive bream, and then again, it'd be a classic just Thatchers for me.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Sweet Skimmer in a match. Sweet Skimmer in a match.
What would you be adding to that? Would you be looking at worms and casters and dead maggots, and how much would you sort of kick the peg off with if that was the case? If you're looking at your peg, how much are you going to feed at the start of the match if you're setting a trap for some skimmers on a line?
I wouldn't feed many particles. The problem is with skimmers and particles is they don't like sitting over bait. Sometimes fishing out the back of your feed to the sides of your feed is better than fishing over your feed. So I'd probably just add like literally a pinch of dead maggots, dead pinkies, few casters, and save the worms in reserve. Yeah. I always think worms are more of an attractive bait. So like you can get away with just feeding casters and maggots and things like that at the start. But then like after you've caught a few and your peg starts to slow, just feeding the same is a bit dull, I think. And then maybe adding some worms to your Sweet Skimmer just gives it a bit more attraction and hopefully will give you another burst of fish.
Yeah,
that's my thinking. But I wouldn't feed too many particles because I just think skimmers just back away from it and sit off the back of your feed personally.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go for a wee, Jake. I am. You crack on for a question.
If there's one thing Jordan's got, it's a weak bladder. I don't know how he catches so many fish, because he doesn't half go a lot. So Mark, with that, I'd back everything Jordan's just said there. I think what you add to your ground bait is often as big as the ground bait itself. In terms of a ground bait mix, Sweet Skimmer is absolutely perfect. It's pretty much what it's been designed for. Those narrow, shallow canals, 3 to 5 foot. I always think like 3.5 foot's your line to catch them on them canals, just out of the main boat track. Just a pinch of dead maggots, a few casters in there. And I think what Jordan was saying there about worms, always hold back with the worms early in your session, because there are days where they're amazing, but there are also days where it can be a bit of a kiss of death. So holding back on the amount of worms that you put in at the start. If you want to put a few in, just put a very small amount in, and then you can always increase that, whereas obviously you can't take them out. He's back.
Perfect. Terrible, aren't I, for that?
You actually are terrible for it. Richard has said, when using a helicopter rig for bream and skimmers, would you kick the hook length off the main line with a small twizzle boom off the swivel, or just connect it directly to the swivel?
On a helicopter rig, you have your 2 stops up the line, don't you? With one of them quick change swivels for your hook length.
Yeah.
And then you tie your feeder in a swivel at the bottom, don't you, as a boom?
Yeah.
So you attach your feeder to the bottom and you have your hook length coming off the swivel.
Yeah. So
but you've got to have a little gap between those 2 stops for your hook length. Otherwise, you get entangled when it spins around.
Yeah. So he's asking whether you would have a twizzle boom from that.
I'd have a twizzle boom.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd fish with like a 6-inch twizzle boom personally.
Yeah, so that it always, because obviously your feeder's dropping straight from your main line. So you'd have a small twizzle boom here, and then your hook length. Yeah. Nice. So how would you do that? Would you tie your hook length with a twizzle boom up to the loop then? Or would you just have a short?
What I do is tie like a little loop in my hook length for feeder fishing. Tie a little loop, but like leave the tag long, and then you can swivel the tag, and then tie another loop. So like you have a little loop which you attach onto the swivel, and then like a bit of boom, and then the hook length. That's what I would do. It always keeps your hook length away from your feeder, and you're never gonna get in a tangle then.
Yeah, I like it. Paul,
not that you're getting many tangles anyway on a helicopter rig, do you? So
no, it's quite a nice rig. It's not something I use. I've sort of got the sort of fishing I do. It's never that far. It's generally for mixed size fish.
It's not for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I tend to use just general running rig with a twizzle boom and down to a couple of stops. But I tell you what we do. I noticed Joe posted it. I actually saw them the other day in the factory. Usually I use like 2 number 8 stops to push my twizzle boom away. We've now got some. I think we're calling them stops with a Z.
Stops.
Yeah.
Stop
so
Z.
Like, yeah. Stop flat edged stops, so that which will do the same job as a stop without having the weight. So I don't know whether I was meant to say that or not, but I think Joe teased it the other day, so I'm going with it. Paul Wilkinson, hi. I was fortunate to win a Dynamite bait prize and unlucky enough to end up with 10 bags of krill expander pellets. Being a Sonubaits bait man, don't have a pump. Is there anything else I could use these for?
I tell you what you could do with them. You can go in the summer commercial fishing, feed them on the top, honestly, and just end up floater fishing with them. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Or you can grind them down, I suppose.
Yeah, there's 2 options. You could make your own ground bait with them. Krill expander.
A lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but if 10 bags of expander pellets is a lot of expander pellets. Like I probably get through, expanders. I use that many at a time. 10 bags is a lot.
You know them pro expanders? Yeah. They've been out for a fair few years now, they have. And I've still got 1 bag from when I joined, the same bag of 4 mil. So
yeah, because you just
10 bags.
Yeah, I'd say you either grind them down or give them to your mates if you're not going to use them. But what George says there about floater fishing, if you ever
It's a
get the
great day
opportunity,
sport.
it's great fun, isn't it? So like just catapulting a few on the surface and then just having one in a band on like basically like a no float rig essentially, wouldn't
Yeah,
you? And just swing it into it, a nice long line, and just try and catch some carp off the surface. I think that's always good fun.
I think that's what I would do. That's how I started fishing. That is going on a local lake by me and feeding dog biscuits and fishing like a floating expander pellet.
Have a look.
That's what I used to do. So that's what I would do with them.
We've got these things, floater fishing
I can
packs.
see me getting some of them.
So these are essentially like great big expanders or dog biscuits, whatever you want to call them. So you've got these. Show you them.
Yeah.
Perfect floaters. You get a little tub of they use colour, so you've got like some browns and reds in there. You get them in there as well. But for that floater fishing, that'll be, I reckon we can go out and do a nice video doing that.
Yeah.
Catch a nice 15-pounder off the surface somewhere.
Yes, that's what I do with your 10 bags. Either have a nice pleasure session with them, floater fishing, or ground them down. And you can make your own ground bait with them if you grind them down.
Or if they're an expander, they'll break down as a paste. But yeah, make your own ground bait or give them
maybe a nice slop or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
David Roberts, how do you make jelly pellets?
I don't know, Jake. I've never tried jelly pellets.
No, I think the only way I've sort of seen it do it is getting the gelatin like sachets. So you get like your hot water. You get it's like a real thin paper, but gelatin like paper or whatever they call it. Get your hot water, pour it in, and you basically just add them to your normal pellets. They then absorb the jelly in. I've never done it myself. It's not something that I've done, especially now because I just use our like pro hookable expanders pre-done.
Yeah, tell you a great alternative to jelly pellets is these ones. Got them here, look.
Yeah.
Pro expanders, them ones, they're ready done, aren't they? And they've got different flavors. Like these are banoffee ones here.
Yeah.
And I'd just use them. If you're going to try do your own jelly pellets, I'd literally just get a tub of them and they're ready to use. So
yeah, the good thing about them, the reason I find a place in them, like I'm not one that would usually use. I'd usually just do my own expander pellets because I want a real nice soft hook bait. But there are situations, especially when I'm for example, I was waggler fishing and wanted to use an expander, I'd use one of them. But also if I'm hair rigging on a method feeder, they're absolutely brilliant for them because they're just a little bit more durable than what a normal expander pellet is. So I'm not risking just splitting it and messing about on the bank, splitting pellets and that sort of thing because they're really good for it.
Tell you what I've done with these banoffee ones here is I've actually got some of the bait booster, the banoffee bait booster, and added that to some of them. I would open it up, but it'll go everywhere. And I think that just softens them up a little bit. And that's something you can do. If you want a little bit more of a durable pellet than your own done expanders, these ones with a bit of bait booster, bang on, I reckon.
Yeah. And David, I'm pretty certain that Joe Caris on his match fishing films has done jelly pellets before in a video. Joe's forever messing about in his kitchen doing different videos. I'm pretty certain I remember him doing something like that at one point. Just go on to his match fishing films. He put a comment on a little bit before, so try and find that. Click on his account, and I'm pretty certain he's done a video tutorial.
He'll definitely have done something like that, won't he?
Oh, he loves it.
Jelly pellets.
Absolutely loves it. He's just forever. He's been like, he's got cheese paste on every radiator in his house.
No, they're all in the freezer now. They're all in the freezer until next year.
Yeah, he's been maturing his cheese paste on the house radiators over winter.
What a man.
Stephen Armstrong, thinking of using super feeder, would you use it on its own or mix it with something else? Fish natural waters. Have you used many of the super feeder ground baits, Jordan?
I've not used any of the super feeder ground baits, but when I went to the Vaughan Canal before I was sponsored by Sonubaits, lots of them used them, and they caught loads of bream, so they catch fish, don't they? Yeah. I've not actually tried them out myself.
Yeah, so basically, obviously there's a couple. Super feeder fish meal is the green version, and that if we were to get any mix, it is nigh on match method mix green. So that is an amazing mix. If you're looking for a green version of Match Method mix, that is essentially what that is. In terms of obviously what you're saying there, it's natural venues. That's the fish meal version. The others are made to be individual mixes. They're in those 2 kilo bags. You don't need to add anything to it. It does just depend what you're fishing for. If you're fishing for big bream, I would be looking at adding some sort of fish meal into them. But if you're fishing for a mixture of roach, skimmers, and bream and hybrids, that sort of thing, you don't need to add anything to it. They've been made to be standalone ground baits, to be good in their own right. It's always that balance. If you're targeting big fish, then always look to add a bit of fish meal in, because pretty much everywhere you go now, even if it doesn't see that much fish meal, tend to be sort of tuned into it, don't they? Especially if carpers go on there, obviously then it would have seen a bit of fish meal. But if not, the 3 natural mixes in that super feeder range are brilliant standalone mixes, so just go straight with them.
Crack on.
David Kane, has the hemp and cheesy garlic liquid enhancer been discontinued as it is out of stock throughout the country? I think everybody's been spreading the word about that. It hasn't been discontinued. I think I've got some somewhere here. It's definitely not been discontinued. It's really, really popular. We did have some issues with our liquid provider last year, but it seems
COVID.
to all... well, yeah, a bit of that. And yeah, I can't remember what he was doing. He was just whatever. I think it was just, yeah, they were busy with other people, and they don't just provide bait manufacturers either. So there's different flavors for different things. So I think they were just super busy. That all seems to be back on track. Hemp and cheesy garlic liquid. Yeah, it's in the catalogue for 2021, and we've got stock of it now. So just ask at your local shop, and they should be able to get it in for you. It's what Joe's been using in his cheese paste mix.
It's what I want to get for next summer as well.
yeah, it's good. It's good. Anthony Hunt, do you recommend using the clear oils on hard pellets to help them sink?
Tell you what, when you go on commercial venues, you've got to use your own pellets. I've got it here, old one, some of that pellet oil, just a little squirt of that on the pellets, the fishery pellets, and all the pellets will sink. And I'll definitely be using that in the summer. Get the pellet to the bottom where you want to catch the fish. Definitely use it.
I actually did a little test with this the other day, because I've obviously know about it. I've worked with us now for over a year, but I wanted to see how it works. So I got a bucket of water and I squirted some. I have some just some standard fish oil that I used to use on all my pellets, and then some clear pellet oil just to see what the difference is. And it's surprising. Like you squirt clear pellet oil in and it sinks to the bottom. It's heavy as anything. And then fish oil, you see it all, and it just becomes a slick on the surface. But it's interesting because it's so heavy. When you go to pour it all out, the clear pellet oil just like is proper nailed on the bottom. And you can just imagine when fish are in your peg and they've maybe even eaten pellets, you can just imagine that that's just going to be in your peg still. Off a bit of attractant, there's still going to be a bit of residue left over for them fish just to find, and a bit of flavour.
Tell you what it's quite good for as well, like you say, that stuff coming to the top, is when some fish have actually come over your pellets and dispersed them off the bottom, it leaves a trail up on the top of the water, so some fish are there and you can go and catch them then on your certain different lines. It's quite good for that. I've seen that happen a few times. Yeah,
so you can actually see it, like that a fish has moved and disturbed what's going on.
I always have that little this one here, the F1 one. I always have that in my bag just in case I go to a fishery on these qualifiers and I just want to get my pellets to sink. I definitely always have that in my bag.
It's usually when you get there and they have like your screttings type pellets, but when they feel really, really pale, like I always think like they're too light and you just know you're going to feed them and they're just going to like either break down to...
They're just like slowly...
or just like sink too slow and the fish are just going to come off bottom. You just know you're going to have a nightmare, and it's brilliant for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Robin has said, hi guys, is the Match Method mix a fine, coarse or medium texture ground bait?
Say it's medium, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Medium textured ground bait.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you show it on camera there? Can
Yeah.
you have it there? I'd say it's a medium ground bait. It's definitely not fine as such. It's like a it's a medium mix in it. It's
I'd say
definitely
it's a medium.
not like a coarse mix that's very gritty or anything like that, but it's not super fine like some of our other mixes.
That's why it's perfect for method feeder fishing, because it's got that. It probably has got a mixture of fine and medium particles, and that's why it's so good for method feeder fishing, because it binds together.
Yeah.
So it's probably a mixture of fine to medium, I'd say. Definitely not coarse.
Yeah. If you're looking for finer fish meal mixes, it seems to be like our pro ground baits are the finer ones, aren't they?
Yeah.
Obviously Thatcher's, Pro Green, Meaty Salmon.
Meaty Salmon. So at the same time.
One of my favorites. But yeah, the pro range seem to be like the finer mixes. They've got some like real high quality fish meal in there. And then the 2 kilo bags, I'd say in general, they're a medium course ground bait. But if you go to our website, there is actually a rating on them all. So you can see there what we've sort of rated them at in terms of how coarse they are. Mark Richmond, good afternoon, gents. Any tips for chucking across rivers on the waggler and getting an idea of depth?
Getting an idea of depth is you've just got to set your float at what you think it's going to be, and have a few casts. Always cast downstream of where you sat, so your line's always behind your float. But just cast downstream, and if your float just goes through lovely, just keep putting it up a bit, like a foot at a time, until it catches on the bottom, like it just dips a little or sinks completely if you're over depth. Then you can just literally shallow your waggler back up a bit until it's just running through nice. Like you can just, it's hard to actually get right, but you can just tell like when you've got it right, because your float just sits and goes through nice. But if you put it up, say a little bit more, like 6 inches more, it just like goes under every now and again, so it's catching on the bottom. So it's just trial and error really to get that set right, but always cast slightly downstream of yourself to get your line going behind your float is a good bit of advice for that. And we've got some new line. Preston have got some new line coming, which would be absolutely perfect for float fishing on rivers. Float max, probably either 3 or 4 pound, will be absolutely bang on. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's all trial and error. Just get sort of setting your depth at what you think it's going to be, and then just going from there, really adding or taking a bit of depth off it.
Yeah,
nice.
Just trial and error, that one.
Nice. Stella said, hi Jake and Jordan, how do you avoid lots of missed bites when paste fishing?
Missed bites when paste fishing is just be patient on the actual bites itself. Wait for it to absolutely shoot under 100 miles an hour. Look at what you're feeding. If you're feeding, I don't know, micro pellets with your paste, you might put too many particles in, which are going all over the shop, and the fish are competing for the bait, and there's too many fish in the spot. So maybe like either feed bigger pellets, 6 mil, 8 mil pellets. Maybe just cut down your feed. Maybe feed corn, but less particles. So yeah, just look at what you're feeding. Try and either cut it back or feed bigger particles, and wait for your float to shoot under.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things, and I am a nightmare for it. I get too impatient when paste fishing. Like I
can't fish paste.
Yeah, I would love to be brilliant at paste fishing. Joe is amazing. Like Joe goes and he set his summer to it last year. I just get so impatient. Like it'll be giving it all this, and then you're like, oh, and then like
I can't do it.
As soon as it goes, and I think, oh well, that was definite. Like it'll pop back up, and I'll like then you've struck your paste off.
I said to Joe, we're gonna have to go this summer. He's gonna have to actually teach me how to fish paste properly.
Yeah, but
those are the tips. You just got to wait for it to go under and look at what you're feeding. Feed bigger particles or less smaller particles, and just keep it under control.
Yeah. Scott Davis has said, what lengths do you tie all your rigs for shallow up in the water fishing for carp, F1s and carp?
Well, for carp, I set it at the length of the top kit, because sometimes you're mugging them, and sometimes you need a really long line. So for me, for my carp fishing, I normally on my mugging rig have a dibber on one, set at about 15 inches deep, just so your actual bait sinks past the fish. You don't want it just dangling in their eye line because they won't eat it. You want it to actually sink past them. So probably set in a little dibber, 4x12 Preston dibber, 15-inch deep with a long line, so the length of your top kit for mugging. And then I have one which is about, when your hook's hooked up at the bottom of the top kit, I have one which is about 3 foot of elastic out. So you probably, your line's like 4 or 5 foot for slapping or just flicking past your bait. That's what I do for carp, but I just, for actually making them up, I just set them the length of the top kit, which is like 20 turns around my yellow winder.
Yeah.
And for F1s, literally not a lot of line at all. Like 4 foot of line will do for F1s, because most of your F1 fishing's done at like less than 2 foot deep, isn't it? A lot of your F1 fishing, either fishing like one of them little F1 shallow floats, either sometimes having just a bulk above your hook length, but sometimes stringing them out can be good. Or just fishing the 4x10 dibber really, really shallow.
Yeah. So what?
Yeah, but just make them up.
When do you look at using a bristled float over a dibber? So you talk then about F1s and using a dibber when it's really shallow. Is there a point where, say, for example, 6-inch to 12-inch, you might use a dibber, but then anything above 12-inch, you want a bristle? And
well, for me, I use a dibber for 16-inch and less, and then an F1 shallow for F1s any deeper than that, or an F1 carp, depending on what I'm fishing for. But a dibber float for 16-inch and less, and a bristled float for anything deeper.
Yeah.
But yeah, just 4 foot of line on your F1 shallow rigs, and I'd have my carp rig set on a top kit personally.
Yeah. It seems like
good tip. A good tip for actually getting your length of rigs right is just to get your top kit out and actually just measure your winder against your top kit, and just like count how many winders go up your top kit, and then you know exactly how many winds to do, and it will fit perfect on your top kit. You won't have too much line. So
yeah, so it's a good trick. I know a lot of people that do like that, and they'll measure it on. So instead of having instead of going like, oh, that's 6
I don't just do this old arm's length business. I know exactly how many turns.
Yeah, I know for mine. I know like that's just over 6 foot, like my arm span. Yeah. Like Gloucester Canal, I'll be like, right, well, I'll go for 3 of them because my rig's my top 5, which is 18 feet. But yeah,
I couldn't do it like that. It just annoyed me when I got my rig off my winder. It's like that much too long.
Yeah, no. Right. Just getting to a last few. If you've got any more questions, just whack them on now so that we can get to them. So we've got the last few coming up. Hi guys, top session again. Can you advise whether adding either bait booster or liquid flavors in the water when prepping your pro expanders affects the pellet quality? Regards, Chris Luckman. So the difference there, so liquid flavors, so these sorts of liquid flavors, these are, in terms of consistency, very, very similar to like water consistency. So I don't know whether you can see in there, just about. So they're not a particularly viscous liquid. They're probably just a bit thicker than water. You can see it like sort of hangs on the side of the bottle a little bit, but not massively. So if you add those to your pro expanders, they won't change anything pretty much. The pro expander will be just as it is anyway, but with the added addition of flavor. So it's a great way of adding flavor. Scopex, or there's the F1 one, which are the two that I tend to use. A great way of adding some flavor and just making your expanders a little bit different. Even though they've got a bit of color, they tend not to really change the color of them much either. They might add a little tinge, but not a massive amount. Bait booster, on the other hand, is quite a thick liquid. It's very, very sort of dense and and heavy. So if you add that to your water, depending how much of it you're adding, if it was pretty much all bait booster, your expanders would tend not to swell quite as much. They would go a lot firmer because the actual water inside there would be heavier. It would be denser because of the bait booster. It'll obviously add a load of flavor to it and attractants, but because it's thicker, it will basically make your expanders a bit denser and less soft as such. but it depends how much you're doing. If you're only adding a drizzle into your water and you mix it up, it will thin out in water. But if it's quite a high proportion of bait booster, it will go thick and heavy, and it'll actually make your expanders a little bit heavier because of the density of that liquid. Hope that answers that.
Yeah.
Class has said, hi all, how much ground bait would you introduce at the start of a session?
Oh, that's a very wide subject, that is, isn't it?
Yeah, so I will create a scenario for you. You are going to we'll go for a natural venue and a commercial.
Yeah.
We looking at that, it's going to be for skimmers and bream and stuff like that. So on a commercial venue, it's 5 feet deep. How much are you putting in there?
Well, if it's on a commercial for carp, I'm probably only going to feed it in the edge. So probably a good starting point is just 3 big pots, 250, 900 mil of ground bait to begin with. See what happens. If loads of fish come in your peg, you don't need to feed as much once you've caught a few or they've spooked off. So if loads of fish are coming in, you probably don't need to feed as much to get another one in. But if they're not coming in, you need to feed more. So you might need to feed a big pot every time a fish comes in. It all depends on what's happening in your peg and how many bites you're getting. If you're getting loads of bites, just putting a cad pot on, a medium or a large cad pot, and filling that up with ground bait can be the one.
Yeah.
And also you can just add micro pellets to your ground bait as well. Add a bit more particles, get them staying in the peg longer as well. That's a good tip for carp. But yeah, it just all depends on what's happening in your peg. The more fish it's got coming in, the less and more regular you can feed. The less fish you got coming in, the more you've got to feed for carp. And probably for carp on a coloured commercial in the summer, I'm going to feed the krill and squid one, new krill and squid. So, and for F1s, I'll be feeding the Power Scope X. Yeah.
Okay. And what about on a natural venue, fishing for skimmers and bream? How much are you putting in there?
On the pole.
On the pole, yeah.
On the pole, depending on how deep it is, but probably quite a lot. Probably a kilo of bait, me personally. Full kilo at the start. Probably 5 or 6 good sized pot sized balls with some casters and maggots, pinkies in, that kind of thing. Saving the worms for later, like we talked about before. But sometimes on a natural venue, it can take a long time for the fish to come in. So you want a bit of bait there. So when they do come in, they stay there. So probably a good kilo of bait to start with. Have lots ready for topping up, because once you do get a few bites, you can feed a lot of bait on natural. So sometimes mixing up 3 kilos or 4 kilos of ground bait on natural venues is needed. So yeah, topping up with worms after you've caught a few, that can be a good little trick. Loose feeding if it's clear. Yeah, that kind of thing.
David Roberts, what ground bait would you use when using prawn on the hook?
Krill and squid. That's what I would. Or meaty salmon, something meaty.
Yeah, meaty salmon or krill and squid. It's got to be, hasn't it? I always think prawns
or bloodworm. Is that a ground bait? Do you use bloodworm ground bait?
I think we do. I don't
know. One maybe.
I think we still got it. I think we've still got it.
One of the meaty ones.
Yeah. I always think meaty salmon, and I'm sure I bet you'd catch some big tench on prawns, wouldn't you?
I'd like to think so.
I bet you would, wouldn't you?
Some big perch.
Yeah, some big perch, definitely. I never told. I once did a feature for the magazine when I was there, and I wanted to go and catch some perch. And I went to a lake and I minced up some prawns and fished prawn on the hook, and I had about 50 pound of skimmers.
Did you?
I had one.
Never.
Yeah, about 50 pound of skimmers. Right, let's just have a quick look. Right, last couple of questions. I think it keeps freezing. Not bait, but tell Jordan Michael Leach says he loves his new rig mate.
Perfect.
Anthony Hunt, do you ever use a jigger or overshotted rig?
Yes, depending on what the fishery rules are. If you're allowed an overshotted rig, I'll just overshot my rig. It all depends on the wind with overshotting rigs, really, depending on how many shot you overshot it. But the windier it is, the more you need to overshot your rig to keep your line still. And if you're not allowed to overshot, that's when you've got to, hang on. If you're not allowed to overshot, you've got to use a jigger then. That's when I'd use a jigger, when overshotting is not allowed.
Nice. David Roberts, what bait booster do you use?
I've got the washed out ones or the Banoffee, personally.
Yeah.
2 favourites.
Tony Higgs, sorry if I missed this earlier. What ground bait mix would you use for silvers on a commercial at this time of year?
I'm going to say Thatchers and Black F1, but probably 2/3 of Thatchers now to just 1/3 of Black F1. And on commercials, you want to be feeding it probably loose, because like literally sandcastle it into your pole pot. So just feeding it loose. Add a handful of soil into your mix or something heavy just to get it to sink through the water layers. That's what I didn't do when I was out with you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I just fed the ground bait and it just floated a little bit, but had a little bit of weight to it. Sandcastle it in, probably like 4 big pole pots, not loads, because you don't want a massive build up of bait, and just feed it like that. And yeah, 2/3 Thatchers, 1/3 Black F1.
Sounds good. Right. I think that is wrapping it up. I think we've answered every question there. If not, as always, make sure that you just send us a message on Instagram and I'll try and get a written answer sent out to you. Thank you everyone for listening, for joining us, sending your questions in. I have started adding these on as a podcast, so they'll be on Spotify. The one with Des last week is now on Spotify as a podcast. So if you are driving and you want to catch up and you've got an hour in the car or whatever, don't know where you'd be going, we can't go anywhere. But if you do, they are there, and I'll be doing that with each one from now. So it is there. Thanks everybody for sending your questions in, and thanks Jordan
Thanks
for
everyone.
joining us.
Have a great weekend.